Welcome to the Interior Design Beat podcast, where you will hear candid commentary on various interior design subjects and topics, including the good, the bad, and the ugly, telling you like it really is. Hello, welcome to another episode of the Interior Design Beat podcast. I'm your host, Steve Adamco, professional interior designer, lighting designer, and furniture designer. Today, I'm going to be talking about another interesting subject, and it is how to hire an interior designer. Now, I've come across some information and some podcasts by other interior designers telling people how to hire an interior designer. And some of the information is really, really good. And some of it is just average and mediocre. And I'm thinking that's not very good information. So I'm going to set the record straight in giving you what you should know about hiring an interior designer for your home, because it's a pretty big decision and a lot of money is riding on that decision. As you know me, I am all about excellence and I hate average and mediocre. Okay. So when I come across that, I hate to hear it because it misinforms people about what should be really done and how to really hire someone. And then some of these interior designers out there are just giving the most, it's just not excellent information. It's average. And a lot of times it's just flat out mediocre. So I'm going to call it like it is because that's what it is. I've been in this industry for nearly 40 years, and it just bugs the heck out of me when I hear people who are relative newbies that aren't nearly as accomplished, experienced, or have the wisdom and the knowledge that I have, and then they're spouting off this stuff. It's like, okay, that's not really good information. Okay, this is this is like going to a restaurant and somebody brings you a hamburger when you're expecting one that's, medium rare and juicy and delicious, and it's overdone. It's like, this is overdone. This hamburger is not done well enough. Whoever the chef was didn't do a very good job. Well, it's the same thing. Sometimes you get this advice and this information from some of these designers, and it's like, well, that was terrible. Wouldn't come here for your advice anymore. And yet a lot of people take these people's advice, and it's like, gee whiz, you should have been able to do something different or know something different. And it's too bad you stumbled on this information because it really didn't give you the full-bodied impact of the information that will help decide, who to hire. And when you're spending some of the most amount of money that maybe you've ever spent in your life, okay? Like, for instance, one bit of advice was, how much should interior design cost? Or how much should furniture cost? They said about 20% of the cost of your house. And I'm thinking, no. There's a lot of times when your furniture should be in the realm of 50% of the cost of your house. And really, if you're really going to do a wonderful job, then in a lot of cases, it could be equal to the cost of your house. People saying, well, how much should it cost? Well, that's like saying, how much should a car cost? Like, okay, there's all kinds of cars. Is it used car? Is it barely running car? Is it popular car? Is it exquisite car? Is it a Ferrari or a Lamborghini? Is it a Rolls Royce? I mean, come on. How much should a car cost? It depends. And a lot of this advice was given on, well, it depends on your style and your look as to how, I'll go into this a little bit more, but let's say, well, here's 3 different price levels of sofas, depending on your style and look. No, it's not just depending on the style and the look, which is relative to the cost of each one of those sofas. It's the quality. It's the materials. Okay? It's the fabric on them. It's the foam. It's the cushioning. It's the padding. It's everything. Okay? Just consider it. Is it a Rolls Royce sofa or is it just, very economical sofa? Is this case goods made by Baker Furniture or is this IKEA? Come on, big world of difference. And it's the same way with golf clubs. I mean, you could spend a little bit or a whole lot. And a lot of it's in the manufacturing and the materials and the design. and the balance and everything goes into it. I mean, you can cheapen out on anything. Well, it's expensive golf clubs, but we're going to put cheap grips on them. No, you don't do that. That's just dumb. So you can take anything and say, well, that's why there's a difference in price because of the quality. Go to the meat market and say, well, why is this filet mignon more expensive than this one? And then you find out that, it's Omaha Steaks or Allen Brothers. As one friend of mine says, Allen Brothers, welcome to the $5 hot dog. $5? Who's going to spend $5? And then they're equating it with Eckrich or something like that. It's like, okay, people, think, what is the difference between this and that in any category? Cars, clothes, shoes, necklaces, earrings, dresses, purses. I mean, it's the same across the board. You can pay a little bit or a whole heck of a lot. You can pay $10,000 for a clutch purse for women. And then, a guy, you can spend $10,000 on a set of clubs. When your wife said, or your girlfriend said, I saw some for like $350. And you say, wow, there's a big difference. Well, hello, and hello. Yes, there is a big difference. So let's be tuned into what the difference is so you can make a good decision and you're able to tell the difference. But you got to be able to tell the difference. So I'm going to go after some of the stuff that's been said. So I can say that a little bit of it might be true, but 80% of it is bad information and bad advice. All right, we're not going to deal with that. Like I said, you get on this podcast, you're not going to get average. You're not going to get mediocre. You're going to get excellence, period. That's all you're going to get here. If you want something less than that, you'll have to listen to somebody else or grow into this one. But I'm not going to play around with people's money, and I'm not going to play around like so many people do in interior design, thinking that this is the enchilada when it's not, when this is the wonderful thing and it's not, when this is the best and it's not. Calling things the best or high quality furniture when it's not high quality furniture is not accurate and it's not truthful. So I'm dealing with the truth here, okay? Not fluff and surely not lies, okay? So that's why I'm bold on this podcast. I just don't tolerate average and mediocre, period. Okay, so I hope you're listening to this podcast for that reason, that you're going to get somebody that's telling the truth, telling you like it is, not fluffing it, and it's based on wisdom, knowledge, expertise, talent, insight. What else did I miss? But that's a chunk right there. That's a chunk of attributes right there. That's why you should be listening to this podcast, because there's a lot of other podcasts out there. I listen to them. It's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe how much fluff is in there. I can't believe how much mediocre newbie information is out there when they call themselves a professional. There's different levels, just like with doctors and surgeons. You got the really good ones and the best and the top drawer, and some are just not. So anyway, I just had to say that right at the beginning of this podcast, okay? So no apologies for doing what I do. No apologies for cutting to the chase. No apologies for telling you the truth. No apologies for telling you like it really is. And like I say, one of the biggest things that just irritates the heck out of me is that in many states and in many localities, interior design is so easily infiltrated, the barrier to entry is so low that even your chihuahua could jump over it. Just really irritates me. So I'm going to be strong about it, okay? It just irritates me. Anything ever irritates you, really irritates you, and you say something about it, well, I'm saying something about it, okay? So anyway, if you were in this field at my level, you'd be feeling exactly the same way. Okay, so let's get out of this average, mediocre, newbie information and stuff that's so proliferated around the internet that you think that's the real deal. No, it's not in many cases. So here's where you're going to get the real deal and the real information, because it's all based on integrity for me. Okay, I don't like to mess around with people's money, and I don't care how much you got. If you're a multimillionaire, which I've worked with them, fine, but we aren't going to do anything that's just wasteful. Everything is going to be an investment. Everything that's thoughtfully done is going to be an investment. Like many of these designers say, design in a day. Yeah, we're going to design it in a day. Well, I guess you could do that, but there's a lot more into doing the discovery work and doing the design and being thoughtful about it instead of just doing it in a day. I guess you could say that's your claim to fame, but that doesn't mean it happens all that fast. Now, sometimes it can. Sometimes it can. Songs could be written in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Not saying it can't happen, but usually there's a lot of thought going into something that you could spend 10, 20, 30, $100,000, $250,000 for. I mean, it's your life. It's your abode. It's your environment you're going to be living in and interacting with. Okay, so I think it takes a little bit of time and should be allowed, just like fine wine. Ernest and Julio Gallo, in their ad from many years ago, said, "We will sell no wine before it's time." Okay? Rushing is the most dangerous thing. Trying to do it quick and fast is the most dangerous thing. Take a little time. Let a few things incubate. Let a few things marinate, such as thoughts, ideas, concepts, and things like that. Don't just rush into it and I do it in a day. Okay, come on. Let's, I don't do that. I mean, I could do that because of my experience and everything like that. But, some of these people doing it in a day is like, man, it looks like it was done in a day. Okay. All right. So I'm going to get off of that. We're going to get into the meat of it right now. So right here, you never have to say, as the old lady for the old commercial for Wendy's, "Where's the beef?" Never have to worry about that here on this podcast. Now, I'm going to say this to all of you out there. Thank you for letting me get that off my chest. I feel a whole lot better now. All right. So let's get on with how to hire an interior designer the right way and the smart way. So the question is, what is the first thing you need to do when you're thinking about hiring an interior designer? So some of the answers were good and some of them not so good. One of them was research. And I agree with that, research. And in my opinion, research who is out there, what do they stand for, what do they do, how do they approach their work? And not everybody that is going to be the wonderful person for your job is going to pop up on the first page of a Google search. As I told you before, a lot of that is based on SEO, not based on how good the designer is. Okay, so there's a lot of things, and some people pay for advertising, which gets them ranked higher, which doesn't mean and doesn't equate to them being a great designer. Again, it's like what I call the pay-to-play thing. So this interior designer, female again, said, research into your style and research into the designer's style. Well, a lot of designers only work in their style. In other words, they aren't what I would call full-fledged interior designers. They can't do any type of design because they base it on themselves, not on the client, which is a disastrous way to begin anything. And then research your own style as the client. The client is supposed to research their own style. Well, a lot of times they don't know what their style is because it's a complicated situation. To say, well, that's my style. Well, okay, but there's a lot more to it than just identifying your style. It could be a combination of a lot of different styles, and somebody's got to orchestrate that. So to say, well, I got to research my style is like a patient researching, well, before I meet with a doctor, I'm going to research what I think I have and maybe try to make my own diagnosis as, what I think or feel is I might have. Okay, now that's not a smart way to go about things either. You go to people for their expertise, and you should look at it for their expertise. Like, for instance, if you're trying to find a CPA, are you going to research your style of CPAing? Are you going to research your style about taxes and tax law? No, you probably don't know that much. I mean, you might know something about it, but you may not know anything about it. So you can't do that. You're reliant upon selecting the right person who knows how to look at things from a legal point of view and from your point of view, and is not so cut and dry because there's a lot of gray area in law. And I'm not saying you skirt the law, okay, relative to that issue. But there's a lot that can be done in interior design. And, your job is to make it easy for the client. That's where the discovery work comes in, and that's where the questioning comes in. Some of the stuff I'm talking about is basics. You do the basics in a phenomenal way. Then you don't have problems popping up in your design. or something that you wish, oh, we could have done this. Oh, I wish we thought of that. Oh, I wish we would have thought of that. Well, if you don't do your preparation right, you're going to end up with lots of those things like, oh, I wish we would have done this. I wish we would have done that. Oh, we missed our great. We should have done this back then, but now it's too late to do anything about it. Yes, a lot of times that happens. If you want to buy into that or pay an interior designer to end up with that kind of result, but you've got to really look at things in a very comprehensive way so that you get your ultimate dream, because most clients don't know what their ultimate dream is. They couldn't tell you what style or what they, you know, what they think, or, what style. They're all confused by all the thousands and millions of choices out there. They can't do it. That's why they're coming to a designer. But again, that designer's got to be really good, to get the best work. Now, some people maybe don't care, but I personally don't care about the people who don't care. I mean, why would I care? I don't. I want to work with, and I do work with, the people who really care. They care about what they receive. They care about quality. They care about having their money invested wisely. And that doesn't mean cheaply. Okay, it can be very expensive, but it's really worth it to them. Kind of like the L'Oreal principle. And I'm worth it. Yeah, you are worth it. For those that think they're worth it, they are worth it. And then I think they're worth it too, especially when they think that way. And then she goes in, well, ask people ask builders. Well, it depends on the quality of the builder. Some of these builders, they work with the average interior designers. They don't work with the best. For some reason, because they know somebody, it's a friend, and we use them all the time. Sometimes they would be better off from a business point of view working with a better designer than they're working with right now, because it's impeding their progress. So, but that's their problem too. If they can't think that through correctly, and if they call themselves the best, but they don't deal with the best when it comes to other disciplines, then to me, that's not very wise. And then she says, look at Pinterest and, all these other things, like, oh my gosh, so much stuff that has been reposted, and people don't even understand about the history of design, interior design, history of architecture. That's why they're roughly clueless. And they fall for every fad and every trend, and it's changing all the time. And they fall for that every single time, which again seems rather ridiculous to me. Why are you doing that? I just can't help it. Things that are done in a way that's not wise. I mean, I'm not part of that. Okay. I like smart people, smart clients, or smart enough to know that they don't know everything that I know to help them, and I am the expert guide and they're not. That doesn't mean you dictate to them, but you help them discover their true dream environment. What is a manifestation, a reflection of them in totality, not just parts and pieces? And then the designer said, chemistry is a big part. Well, I agree. Chemistry is a big part. No doubt about it. And then she says, well, you got to like their style. And then she says, just talk to any kind of tradesman. Like a carpenter is going to know a real great designer, know what real great design, or an electrician is going to know a real great designer. What do they know about it? I mean, most designers don't even know about carpentry and electricity or lighting. And you're going to expect them to know who a good one is. Now, they may know. I mean, they may. But then again, to say, oh, yeah, just all these different random places you should go to get advice on a good designer. Again, it's just like opinions. Everybody's got one, but you want the best one. You want an expert opinion. So my opinion is, my counsel is, do your research, find out who's got the goods. Say, well, you like this style and somebody's got your style, but then suppose later on you realize, I thought that was my style, but now I realize that really isn't my style, but you got a designer that worked in the style that you like before you realized that, oh, that's not really the style that I am now that I think about it. Again, bingo. That's why you've got to have somebody that asks the right questions so that you get the right answers and the right results can be delivered. Is so important. It's just like a doctor or an attorney might do relative to their procedures. And then she did say something that I definitely agree with, is reach out and talk to these people, have a conversation. We found you here, how do you go? Because you can see somebody's style on the web. But maybe that's because they've dealt with a lot of clients who like that kind of style. But any good designer is going to be able to work with any kind of style because the principles of design are always the same no matter what kind of design it is, period. So I guess I'm just a little fired up today because so often I hear of this commentary where people think, oh, she's a fantastic designer, and then this is her advice. And it's like so many people are getting led astray in areas that they shouldn't be getting led astray. And it's like, here's a few things that are accurate and true, and here's some things that really aren't very accurate. You can't mix in accuracy with inaccuracy. You've got to go for accuracy all the way through. That's what an expert does. That's what a real pro does. And I will say, and I agree with her, that somebody that you have a connection with, but it's a connection that goes deeper than just obvious connections. Like, I like that person, I think they're great, or, communication is a big, big deal, but you're not going to know the depth of their expertise and knowledge and wisdom until you start working with them and you see what they bring out in you. Like, they bring out the best of you for you. That is critically important. And also, I agree with the fact that you want to find out about their process. How do they go about design from the beginning to the end? And then, the person asks the designer, what about credentials? What do you look for credentials? Well, I think credentials are important. In other words, credentials are like, what do you bring to the table? Your experience, your knowledge, all the different things you've worked with, the types of jobs you've worked on. And then she said, it's important to be ASID certified. And here's where I thought, oh no, here we go again. ASID certified. ASID does not certify you. ASID is a membership platform. Okay, the American Society of Interior Designers. It's an association. It's a membership. They do not certify you. You have to be certified by NCIDQ, National Council for Interior Design Qualification. Okay, that's the testing agency, kind of like the bar exam. Then the attorneys, let's say, join the bar association after they've passed the bar exam. So it's the same thing. NCIDQ is the one who does the certification, not ASID. And so she spoke it wrong, is that ASID certified. She's wrong. Boy, that bugs me. It's like, okay, if you're a pro, you're totally off base on that one. Tells me you're kind of clueless. People who kind of don't know what they're talking about, or kind of think they know what they're talking about, but don't. You see my irritation here? Okay, I'm about accuracy. If you're going to fool around with inaccuracy or untruthful statements or things that aren't true, and you're giving that information out, then, check that you know your stuff. Gosh sakes, that bugs the heck out of me. I mean, does anybody out there think that that's cool? Not know what you're talking about and sound like you know what you're talking about, but you don't know what you're talking about. And then the people are listening to you thinking you know what you're talking about, don't even realize that you don't know what you're talking about. You got the blind leading the blind there. Or you could say the half blind leading the blind. Maybe that's more appropriate. So here's this designer on this podcast. She says, I'm not ASID certified, which again, they don't certify. And she says, I didn't go to college for this. I was going to go through political science major or maybe be an attorney. And then at the last minute, I decided to be an interior designer. Oh my gosh, there's another one. We get all these people from everywhere just getting into interior design. And it's like, oh my gosh, everybody wants the notoriety, the celebrity of being, I'm an interior designer. And just because I say I'm an interior designer, I must be one of the celebrity interior designers of the awesome stature. I'm doing work around the globe. Gosh sakes, I hate that kind of stuff. And then she says, loosely, you don't need to look for any specific credentials. Wow, what another dumb statement. And she says, just word of mouth. Really? Whose mouth is the word coming from? Whose mouth is the word coming out of? Who's got the mouth of wisdom? Word of mouth. word of mouth. Okay, that's important, but a lot of times people that do word of mouth, just like that one podcast I said, word of mouth was the builder said the interior designer was awesome and fabulous and wonderful to work with. And then this high grade attorney, after he worked with her and had her do her house, probably should have had me do it if he knew me earlier, but the builder highly recommended. So there again, you ask, she was saying, well, ask a builder or ask a tradesman. That was a point I mentioned in a previous podcast, was that the builder said she was awesome. And then after the job was done, the attorney said to me in a phrase that I'll never forget, is that he said, the attorney, that the builder said that she, the interior designer, was awesome and great to work with, but the attorney said he didn't tell me that her work sucked. Okay, people in listening land, get a clue. Dang, I'll tell you, it irritates me when people start working with a designer when they should have got somebody like me. And then that time and that effort and that money is wasted because it was a crap job. Infuriating to me. And then that opportunity is gone. So you got to watch out who you're getting your advice from, who you're getting your referral from, who you're getting anything from. You better check out where you're getting your opinions from and your sources from and your referrals from and who's this and who's that and who's supposed to be awesome but really isn't, because the other person doesn't know what the heck they're talking about. I really wanted to say something else right there. Okay? Anyway. Okay, moving on. I also agree with her comment that, the client is interviewing the designer and the designer should interview the client as well. So you can see if it really, truly is a good fit. That is extremely important. Nobody can just take on anybody. You've got to make sure that it's got a good fit, that the resources are there, that the desire is there, that the appreciation, the mutual respect is there. There's a lot of things that have to be there because interior design is very involved. Lots of details. Okay? So, again, the old phrase, buyer beware. Like I say, I bring all this stuff up. If somebody's going to interview me, then guess what? While they're interviewing me, I'm going to be asking them questions and I'm going to be educating them along the way in what it takes to make sure that you have a job that you're proud of and a house that you're proud of, even if it takes 3 or 5, 7, or 10 years to do. You set people up for success at every step of the way. Now, in a lot of cases, for a lot of people, the process of selecting a designer, the process of going through interior design can be overwhelming. But that's what a real professional does. He takes the burden off of you and makes it a smooth, wonderful experience. That's so important. I mean, there are so many dimensions to interior design in the whole process and being involved in it. And to have confidence in a person's ability, not just, oh, I love their style, oh, I love their personality, but what about their ability? What about their ability to create a situation where you feel totally confident? Okay, that's important. Oh, I should add, when you're feeling totally confident, what does that do for you? It gives you peace of mind. Yes, peace of mind. A great feeling to have when you're going through an interior design process and project. Now, relative to the design process, there's a whole range of how you work with someone. Some clients will say, you do the whole thing. But again, it's important for the designer on behalf of the client and for the client's best interest to ask the right questions, to get the right answers in order to deliver the right results. But, it can be a blending. It could be 50-50 where, maybe a designer does all the concept and the client does the searching. But usually I don't do that because I do it all for everyone for the reason that the way I look at fabric and think about it in terms of color, pattern, and feel, and how it adds to the ambiance of the space, as well as other things, is important because every time you make, let's say you make one decision, then you make a second decision. That second decision affects the first decision, and the first decision affects the second. Then you add a third and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth, and they're all starting to affect each other. And if you don't have a handle on how all that affects everything and modifies it every step of the way with every choice you make, see, most people don't have that wherewithal to understand the complexity of all the interactions that go into interior design. Okay? That is so super important. It's got to be some kind of client involvement to begin with in order to have any successful interior design job. A designer should not just say, okay, well, I'm just going to do it any way I feel like it without any input from you. I think that's insane. Who would do that? And then if that is done, and then the client says, well, I didn't think this is going to be this way, then now you got a big problem because there's not any agreement on it. It's like, well, do whatever you think because I'm busy. Well, that doesn't fly. That sounds like it's a good workable situation, but really that's a danger lurking in the background that has teeth to bite you later. Yeah, and I won't even accept anything like that. You got to bring something to the party. I mean, that's like somebody getting married and they tell their spouse, you do everything, I'm not going to do anything. Oh, how's that going to fly? Men, how's it going to fly? Women, ain't going to fly for anybody. Unless you're pure, well, I won't say that. Anyway, got to have some fun to lighten this up because this is serious stuff. I mean, this is very serious. That's why I am saying it in such a serious way. Yeah, I like to have fun all the time, but this is serious business. And when you're in it, you act serious. You do things seriously. You do it with purpose and intent. You can have fun along the way. You can have gobs of fun along the way, but don't be so, well, we're just having so much fun that there's no seriousness and then everything goes to pot. No, everything goes, whatever word you want to use. Everything goes to, okay, which means it goes, okay. You know what I mean? Okay, fill in the blank. Here's a podcast where you can fill in the blank yourself. At least in some spots anyway. Now, continuing on, as a client, you want to bring a set of questions because it's important that you ask the right questions of the designer. And then you can see, how well do they answer that question? How deeply, how thoroughly, how expertly? And the good ones, like myself, you're going to get a great answer, but you're also going to get an education with the answer. See, that's adding benefit on top of benefit on top of benefit. So that's an important one because a real good designer is also going to ask some very great questions and some pointed questions about the client. So it's going to be back and forth questioning and answering. So you're going to get a sense of, does this person really know their stuff? Are they really good? Or that other people said they were good, but you're perceiving that they're not as good as what other people said they were. Okay? So again, take the advice of Ronald Reagan in a certain sense and do this. Trust, but verify. But again, a lot of times it's hard to verify if you don't know the right questions to ask or you're not very familiar with interior design and the discipline of interior design and the process of interior design. See? So that's why it's so important to right away get the top drawer advice. Don't get contaminated by the wrong advice because it will really contaminate you to the point where you're not making the right kind of decisions. And later on, you're going to find out that, maybe we shouldn't have hired this person. And now we're in it so deep. Okay, so save yourself the agony of defeat, as they said in the Olympics. You want the triumph. And so it takes somebody of, what do you want to say? It takes an exquisite person. Let me just use one word that would encapsulate knowledge, wisdom, expertise, insight, understanding. Let's call it exquisite. All right. So we're talking about how to hire an exquisite person. Okay. And keep that definition up there high. Okay, just like the gold medal. Do not lower the gold medal to silver or bronze. Keep it where it's supposed to be. right at the apex. Like I said before, I'll agree with this designer that communication is everything. Yes, great communication is everything, and it is absolutely vital and critical. So, again, I'm coming into this podcast as responding to things that are spoken out there that a lot of people are hearing, which is good to a degree, but then there's a bunch of it that is not very good and not good advice and not accurate enough. So maybe one of these days I'll do a podcast where, okay, it's all me and what this is straight ahead. This is what I think you should do to hire an interior designer and do it right once the first time and do it smartly. But I also have to come against a lot of this information that is not really good and respond to it as to how it could potentially cause some havoc in your design, or realizing that, it could have been this had you had somebody that was better. And then even if it cost a little bit more money, then you would have been happier. Again, it's kind of like the CPA story I said, where, one person will say they want the cheapest one, but then the cheapest one actually cost them more money because the one that was maybe twice as expensive knew about certain ways that they could save $20,000 on taxes where the cheap guy didn't. And so then because they did the cheap guy, they lost out on $20,000 of deductions where they would have gotten it with a guy who was twice as expensive as the one they hired. You see what I'm talking about? That is a terrible waste, again. And then she said, well, knowledge is power. Well, I agree. Knowledge is power, but it's the right knowledge directed the right way, which is wisdom and knowing how to use knowledge to get the results. It's just not knowledge is power, point blank. Just because you have knowledge does not mean it's power. You've got to be able to wisely use that and direct it for what you need. So, there's a lot of PhDs out there that are clueless about other things. So don't tell me that, that's power. Did they go down the street and you say, wow, that guy's got all kinds of knowledge. Look at that guy in going down the street in that car. But he's just power going someplace to happen. Not necessarily. See, that can be a little bit ridiculous. Anyway, got to use some of these analogies, I guess, to get the point across. Oh, and another important point that was brought up too, which I agree with, is, start the process as early as possible. Don't wait till the last minute, because it takes time to do design work. It takes time to get custom things made. It takes time for them to be delivered. And it has to interface with a lot of different people's schedules and manufacturers' schedules. So very important. So it's always better to be ahead of the game, ahead of schedule, but that means being ahead of it when you start. It always reminds me of that famous saying, poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. So that's very important. That also reminds me of something too. Don't rush the process, because when it's all done, you're going to be living with it for a long time, many, many years. All things being equal, what does an extra week mean? When I was working on a country club, I told the committee chair, and I think all the people that were on the committee agreed that, since we're going to be living with this for a long time, let's just take the time that's necessary. Let's not rush the process. That doesn't mean we slow the process down, but don't rush it prematurely, okay? Always think of it like gestation period for a human being. Premature babies, or preemies as they call them, typically have problems. So make sure that things are done thoroughly so that you don't have to go back and do it over. If you have to go back and do it over, that means something was drastically wrong in the very first place. So a lot of wisdom is this statement: slow down in order to speed up. Stop and think about that. Slow down in order to speed up. Because if you speed up and then you find out something went awry or haywire, now you've got to slow it and you lose lots of time and sometimes lots of money. So it's just very wise to do things at a good pace, but not one that you're like, stepping over things that you should be noticing. When you rush a process, you step over things that you should be noticing. And if you don't notice it, there goes an opportunity that you'll never see come to pass because it'll be too late. Okay. So again, if I can say anything, it's not just knowledge. I mean, it is knowledge and experience, but wisdom is the principal thing. Okay. Important to deal with a wise interior designer who really knows their stuff and can deliver on a multiple format and multiple levels, okay, which is what I call a full-bodied experience. That's what I deliver, and I don't deliver anything less than that. All right, and then part of the discussion revolved around budget. Well, budget is very, very important, as we all know. And people say, well, how much does a room cost? That's like, okay, that's a loaded question. It can be simple all the way up to very complex. And as one famous designer said, yeah, I can do a simple low budget room if you stay out of the way. But if you get involved, it's going to be 4 times that much, or thereabouts, maybe 20 times more. Who knows? But anyway, with all the diversity and the complexity, it can go from minimal all the way to sky's the limit. Multi-million dollars. So they were talking about, good, better, best. And so what they did was the good, better, best. Here are 3 different price points, 3 different sofas, 3 different looks. Okay, they're talking about price point and looks. That does not even delve into the quality of the piece and what makes one so much better than the other and why one will last decades longer. I've been doing design for people who I started out in the very beginning, and we got, let's say, Baker Furniture. It's so well made that we've reupholstered it a second time, and it still looks fantastically gorgeous. Now, does it have the right look and the right style? You betcha. Does it have the long-lasting quality? You betcha. Has that craftsmanship been built in right from the get-go? You betcha. And that's what you pay for. So, a lot of people don't understand that with upholstery, there's a lot under the cover that you don't see. And then the cover or the fabric, you could do it $36 a yard, which I wouldn't even put hardly anything done in that. But, the average now is like, 80, 100, 150. I mean, there's fabrics that go up to like $600 a yard and higher. Okay. But there's a definitive difference in the durability, in the feel, in the drapeability, in the upholstering aspect of how well it conforms to the shape, how nicely it looks. It's like dressmaker details. So these are very important things to consider. You've got to point out the details like, okay, here's this Chevy Malibu. What is the difference? Paint, finish, and everything else, technology, horsepower, design, compared to this Ferrari. How come this Ferrari is more expensive than this Ford Focus? They both start with F. Ferrari, Ford Focus. What's the difference? Why is one more so expensive? How can it be? This car's a car. Well, to the average person, it might be. But to the car aficionado, it's a different horse of a different course. So anyway, think about that for a second. And why is there such difference? Because of the design, the craftsmanship, the level of precision, so many different things that go into it. So it all adds up if you know how to control it right. And that's the big key factor. And along with budget is how do you allocate the budget? How do you prioritize the budget so the right things are done first, and then you can fill in and then embellish or get better later. So you've got to have really, whether it's one room or a whole house, a master plan so that you know where you're going. So if you can't do it all at one time or something becomes more expensive like upholstery and sofas and rugs more than you thought, so that you have to postpone other things, then you've got that master plan to go by. Now, sometimes you might run into the fact that, okay, that was available then, it's not available now. That was a style that was current, now it's discontinued. Now what do you do? Especially in fabrics. Well, now it's discontinued. You say, oh my gosh, that was the most marvelous fabric I've ever seen, the most appropriate fabric, and now it's not available. Or we needed 65 yards and they only have 25. Well, you might be able to do some toss pillows and maybe some chairs and stuff, but you're not going to be able to do the look that you wanted. So there is a lot of dynamics to this whole thing, a lot of dynamics that most people have no clue about. That's why you need an expert. It's not just the designer. It's the designer slash businessman slash entrepreneur slash orchestrator slash orchestra conductor. Okay? Got to know about all that stuff, the minutia and the big stuff, the macro and the micro. Extremely important. And one of the most important things also is a designer who can see it done before it's done. I'll tell you, I thank God that I've been gifted to be able to see the project done before it's done. And I don't mean just see, I can literally see it as if I'm there and move around in the space as if I'm there and touch the fabrics as if I'm there and feel the emotion and the ambiance as if I'm there. And I can explain it precisely, exactly in cinematic vision, voice, and words so that they capture in their own minds and imaginations exactly what it's going to look and feel like before it becomes a reality. Now, they rarely see it with the same intensity as I do. I see it like in full-fledged Technicolor, as it were, Dolby Sound, IMAX, so to speak. I mean, I'm seeing and feeling the whole, what do you want to say? The whole thing. They, a lot of times, will see a portion of it, but enough to get the vision that gets them really excited. So when you have a designer that not only has the experience, but the wisdom, the knowledge, the expertise, the insight added to that, wow, that is something special. So I'm very thankful that I have that ability. Now, I also study all the time. I'm also sharpening my own axe, as it were. So, you have those gifts and talents and abilities that you just keep keeping them in prime shape, in prime condition. And so very few people can deliver that whole scenario. So the feeling, the emotion, the ambiance, the look, the tactile sense, to be able to create interiors that affect all the senses, the mind, the intellect, the emotions, the sight, the touch, the feel, the spiritual aspect too. I mean, everything that a human being can pretty much experience is there. And so the personalities of the clients are brought into it, expanded on, and really come to fruition and full flower. It's just amazing. I get them when they're really a flower bud. But with my interaction with them and the whole process, the whole thing just blooms. And then when you have a full flower and full bloom, you have the full fragrance, which is like the ambiance. It's that intangible aspect. So it just is culminating in this great experience. So it's hard to get into every little detail on these podcasts. And some of the podcasts will go maybe a little longer than I wanted them to. And obviously there's some things that I'm extremely passionate about, as you well know. And, I express that. It's kind of like that book that I read, changed my life a long time ago. Why am I afraid to tell you who I am? Well, I'm not. I'm not afraid to tell you who I am, what I stand for, and what I feel about things. And saying it in a truthful way, because I care so much about people not getting led astray. And I want them to experience the very best. And if they can experience it with me, so much the better. But if for some reason, like they live too far geographically, or who knows, they can't afford me or whatever, then at least I can set them up for success. Hopefully they'll be able to take what I've said and be a better chooser of the designer that they want to work with. Give them better tools so that they can be assured that they've got the right one. So that's tremendously important. So that's the whole wrap on the whole thing. there's so much more, like every topic that I could talk about, so much more that I could go into and delve into. But that's going to have to be saved for when I do my courses on the platform Thinkific. So that's going to be coming up where people are going to be able to pay to take my courses on comprehensive master class on interior design, a course on lighting design, and a course on space planning and furniture arrangement and how to balance a room properly, all the things that make for fantastic, glorious living. That's going to be coming up in the very near future. That's going to be definitely paid program and courses that will not be free like this podcast. But that's why I go into all those things, the secrets and the procedures and what I do that creates the magic that I create, which is the magic of ambiance or ambience, if you prefer French or English pronunciation. All right. Well, this podcast is being done to go live on Friday, which is the beginning of Memorial Day weekend. And hopefully we'll have another podcast for you on the day after Memorial Day. Okay. So anyway, have a safe and fun time for the holiday weekend. And just think on this. Meditate on it a little bit. Let it marinate a little bit in your mind and your imagination. And so we will talk to you next time on the Interior Design Beat podcast. See you later, everybody.